A pink-haired girl sits strapped to a chair, enduring lethal surges of electricity. The protagonist desperately clings to the delusion that this is merely a simulation. Sua whispers her final limits, blood dripping as her strength completely fades away. He keeps telling himself the logout button will appear if he just waits. With a tearful apology, the life finally leaves her eyes, leaving only silence. He reaches out screaming her name, but the game over screen is permanent. The nightmare continues as the reality of his situation sinks in deeper. His friend beside him slumps forward, admitting he has reached his absolute limit. With his dying breath, he burdens Woo-hyun with the heavy command to survive. Woo-hyun screams in agony as he watches his entire party perish around him. As the seconds tick by, the horrifying truth becomes impossible to ignore. Under the cold clinical lights, he begs the empty room for mercy. Shackled and alone, Woo-hyun cries out, terrified of being the only one left. This torture chamber is no longer a digital construct or a bad dream. Tears stream down his face as the weight of his solitude crushes him. The brutal pain confirms that this hell has become his new permanent reality. He screams into the darkness, his mind fracturing under the immense psychological pressure. It all began with a simple search for the hit VR game, Reverse Planet. It was the #1 game worldwide, obsessing players across the entire globe. It promised a fantasy of dimensional gates, superpowers, and epic wars for glory. Players flocked to the virtual battlefield, eager to become heroes of legend. Woo-hyun joined at a friend's suggestion, expecting a fun adventure, not a death sentence. Instead of an adventure, they found themselves hopelessly trapped within the game's world. The virtual setting manifested into reality, bringing all its horrors into the physical realm. Back in the cell, hazmat-clad figures arrive to inspect their surviving lab rat. A scientist coldly congratulates Woo-hyun on surviving the process to become a transcendent. This is Project Transcendence, a twisted initiative designed to force human evolution. Thousands of lives were sacrificed in these files to create a single success. Victims endured electric shocks and biological tampering in a gross display of mad science. As they order the corpses burned, Woo-hyun vows to survive and slaughter them all. The facility's alarms blare crimson, announcing that the lab rats have finally broken out of their cage. Woo-hyun and the other survivors sprint down the corridor, fueled by a desperate hope for freedom. His companion shouts that the exit is just past this hallway, urging the group to push through the pain. But their frantic dash comes to a screeching halt as a heavy boot steps into their path. A red-haired enforcer blocks the stairs, looking far too excited about the prospect of murder. With a sadistic grin, the guard announces that their little field trip ends right here. The survivors freeze, realizing their stolen weapons are likely useless against a monster like this. A brave ally steps up to the slaughter, ordering Woo-hyun to watch the rear while they buy him time. The villain laughs at their noble sacrifice, charging up an attack to wipe them all out at once. In a flash of violence, the brave defenders are crushed, their resistance ending in a single heartbeat. The enforcer roars with laughter, reveling in the bloodshed like a kid in a candy store, if the candy was violence. Woo-hyun is left trembling on the floor, surrounded by the broken bodies of the people who just tried to save him. Tears stream down his face as the nightmare repeats itself, proving that hope is a dangerous thing in this place. The image of his slaughtered friends burns itself permanently into his retinas. His grief twists into hallucinations, manifesting as dark, shadowy figures rising from the corpses. The spectral voices scream about the unfairness of their deaths, begging him to do something. The shadows distort and stretch, chanting Woo-hyun's name in a deafening chorus of agony. Time loses all meaning as the seconds bleed into days, and the days stretch into years. 3 years have passed since he managed to crawl out of that hellhole alive. Woo-hyun has transformed into a living weapon, tearing through armed security squads with terrifying efficiency. He moves with the weight of the dead behind every step, crushing anyone who stands in his way. His life has become a singular, bloody loop of hunting down the people responsible for his trauma. He weaves through gunfire, making highly trained soldiers look like uncoordinated amateurs. Every strike is fatal, a testament to the monster the lab inadvertently created. He stands amidst the carnage of his latest battle, physically unstoppable but mentally fracturing. The hallucinations haven't left him. The dark spirits of his friends still cling to his psyche. No matter how many bodies he stacks, the thirst for vengeance remains completely unquenchable. Exhaustion sets in as he wonders how much longer he can sustain this existence of endless killing. The plea to avenge them hangs over him like a curse, driving him forward even when he wants to stop. But in the darkness of the facility, a familiar blue holographic interface suddenly illuminates his face. His eyes widen in shock as the impossible suddenly manifests before him. A system notification appears, offering a bug fix mission. Kill the boss to return to his original world. It is the lifeline he has been butchering his way toward for 3 agonizing years. The office is silent, save for the wet groans of the security detail he just dismantled. The general manager kneels in the wreckage, confused why his perfect weapon is malfunctioning. He screams in frustration, unable to comprehend why a lab rat would reject the glory of their experiment. Woo Hyun grabs the man by the collar, his patience for villainous monologues having run out long ago. He stares down at the architect of his misery, looking for a reason to hesitate. The manager tries to regain control, barking that the subject has no right to question him. But the title of Experiment Number 62 no longer holds any authority over the living weapon standing before him. Woo Hyun stands as the pinnacle of their twisted science, a superhuman created to destroy. Realizing force won't work, the manager switches to flattery, praising his creation's perfection to save his own skin. He desperately offers anything, wealth, power, desires, to keep his head attached to his shoulders. Woo Hyun raises a hand, completely unmoved by the bribes of a dead man walking. The manager flinches, realizing that his negotiation tactics are failing miserably. Panic turns to venom as he screams that his death won't stop the machine. He invokes the League of Enterprises, warning that the organization never forgives a traitor. He threatens Woo Hyun's family and friends, which is usually the last mistake a villain makes in these situations. A swift, unseen strike silences the threats before the sentence is even finished. The manager's body slumps, leaving the silver-haired ally stunned by the sudden execution. His companion rages about the mess and lost intel, unable to see the blue screen Woo Hyun is staring at. The system confirms the mission is complete and offers the yes or no choice to finally go home. The light of the interface reflects in his eyes, a beacon of hope after years of darkness. His finger trembles as he reaches out, one tap away from ending this nightmare. But the ghosts of his trauma rise from the floor, refusing to let him leave so easily. The spirits of his fallen friends claw at him, demanding he stay and finish the vengeance. They want him to burn the entire league to ash, not just one middle manager. For a moment, the guilt threatens to anchor him to this hell forever, but he looks at his blood-soaked hands and decides he is simply too tired to continue. As he tries to accept the exit, his ally shatters the moment by claiming Woo Hyun has been here from the start. The ghost of his friend fades away, leaving behind a final, heartbreaking request to apologize to the others. Woo Hyun jolts awake in a cold sweat, the phantom sensation of death still clinging to his skin. He scans his surroundings, bewildered to find himself sitting in a peaceful, ordinary bedroom. He checks his own body, desperate to confirm if this return to normalcy is actually genuine. His trembling hand lifts a smartphone, the glowing screen displaying a date that shouldn't be possible. It is the exact same calendar day he was first dragged into the nightmare, as if he never left. He realizes with a start that while he lived a lifetime in hell, not a single second passed on Earth. The mirror reveals a stranger. His battle-hardened muscles and scars have vanished, replaced by his old, soft self. The pristine reflection mocks him, suggesting that perhaps the blood and gore were just a hallucination. But the darkness in his eyes tells a different story, one of cold, hard experience that refuses to be forgotten. Memories of the slaughter flood back, the sensation of tearing through enemies too visceral to be fake. He can still feel the phantom weight of the blade and the spray of blood on his skin. The desperate pleas of the dying girl echo in his ears, a sound no dream could ever replicate perfectly. The twisted face of the manager screaming threats is burned into his mind with crystal clarity. He stands in the dark, rejecting the comforting lie that it was all just a nightmare. The trauma is too deep, the memories too vivid to be anything but the absolute truth. He accepts the heavy reality that the 10 years of hell he endured actually happened. A sudden vibration from the desk breaks his trance, pulling him back to the mundane present. The screen lights up with an incoming call from a name that sparks a flicker of recognition. He stares at the name Jung Nayeon, digging through his fractured memories to place her. As he reaches for the device, the sound of her voice triggers a specific recollection. The wallpaper shows a happy memory, confirming she is his closest friend from before the fall. She immediately launches into a scolding tirade about a missed promise, oblivious to the fact he just returned from a literal war. Woo Hyun stammers, completely lost as he tries to recall social obligations from a decade ago. She reminds him of their meeting tonight and promises to send the location, not giving him a moment to breathe. He tries to ask for clarification, but the pace of normal life is moving too fast for his shell-shocked brain. She hangs up abruptly, leaving him holding a deadline and a confused expression. He stands there in silence, the mundane conversation feeling more alien than the monsters he fought. A realization hits him as he stares at the phone. She is the linchpin of this entire tragedy. His memory rewinds to the moment she excitedly dragged him into the very game that would steal 10 years of his life. He recalls the casual conversation that started it all, where she admitted to barely touching the game herself. The realization that she dragged him into hell without even knowing the mechanics herself makes his blood boil. His hand tightens into a fist as he realizes his decade of torture stems from her simple, ignorant whim. She had buttered him up with praise about his rank, wanting to use his skills for her streaming career. He was never meant to be a hero, just a guest star to boost her viewer count on a small platform. The memory fades into the background of a noisy dinner, leaving him questioning if that promise even matters anymore. Back in the safety of his room, his instincts drive him to investigate the source of his misery. He pulls up the information on the game's developer, locating their headquarters far away in Silicon Valley. But the geographical distance brings a wave of hopelessness, as he realizes he has no means to reach them. The phantom sensation of restraints returns, reminding him that poking the hornet's nest might just invite more pain. He collapses into his chair, questioning why he is chasing ghosts when he should be grateful for his escape. He resolves to close the book on that chapter of his life and bury the memories deep. He tells himself firmly that this is his original world and the nightmare is finally over. A sudden touch on his shoulder makes him flinch, his body still wired for constant danger. But it is only his old friends, welcoming him back to a social circle he hasn't seen in 10 mental years. He forces himself to go through the motions, walking through the school gates like a normal student. He navigates the mundane routine of campus life, desperately trying to blend in with the peaceful crowd. He sits in the library, listening to idle chatter about majors while his mind remains on a battlefield. But the facade of normalcy is thin, and the cracks begin to show almost immediately. A dark, blood-red presence looms over him, whispering doubts about whether this reality is even real. The classroom twists into a torture chamber, the shadows of the dead urging him to continue the slaughter. The sound of a dropped object hits his ears like a gunshot, shattering his fragile concentration. He freezes in terror, his erratic behavior drawing concerned and confused stares from his classmates. He stumbles into the hallway, gasping for air as the walls seem to close in around him. The physiological reaction is undeniable. His body is rejecting the peace he fought so hard to return to. When a hand reaches out to check on him, his combat instincts override his rational mind. He intercepts the limb with lightning speed, treating a gesture of concern as a lethal attack. In a blur of motion, he twists the arm and slams the attacker against the wall. His grip tightens around a pen, wielding the harmless stationery like a dagger ready to strike a fatal blow. He snaps out of the trance to find his terrified friend pinned under him, staring up at a killer's eyes. Wu Yun snaps out of his combat trance, quickly apologizing to the terrified student he nearly assaulted. The student backs away, muttering about how weird Wu Yun has been acting lately, clearly freaked out. Alone on a bench, his hands tremble so violently he can barely manage to open a simple soda can. He sits in the golden afternoon light, but his mind is still trapped in the darkest corners of that dungeon. The hallucinations return, bloody figures clinging to his legs and begging him not to forget their suffering. A familiar voice cuts through the madness, calling his name with a mix of concern and annoyance. It's Nayeon, looking down at him and asking if something happened since he's been acting out of his mind. Wu Yun forces a smile, burying the truth under a layer of casual denial to protect his sanity. He tells her nothing is wrong, lying through his teeth to the person who unknowingly started this whole mess. She buys the act, offering her help as a big sis before walking away, completely oblivious to his internal war. As she leaves, Wu Yun's smile fades into a grim realization about his condition and the ghosts he carries. He acknowledges that the ghosts aren't haunting him, he is the one holding on to them and the vengeance they represent. The bloody specters remain by his side, a constant reminder that his war isn't over just because he logged out. He realizes that as long as these memories exist, there is no difference between this peaceful world and hell. With a heavy heart, he decides there is only one way to silence the screams in his head for good. He stands before a sleek VR capsule, the gateway back to the nightmare he just escaped. He steps inside, fully aware that he is voluntarily returning to the place that destroyed him. The lid closes, sealing him in darkness as the system begins the login sequence to Reverse Planet. His eyes glow with determination as he vows to finish this properly this time, on his own terms. The familiar blue interface welcomes him back, the digital world that became his reality for 10 agonizing years. He materializes in a sterile room, wearing the white jumpsuit of a test subject once again. He looks in the mirror, confused as to why the environment looks so clean and clinical compared to his memories. He wonders if he has entered the actual game this time, rather than the twisted reality he lived in. He questions why he wasn't sent back to the ruined world where his vengeance awaits him. The system interrupts his thoughts, asking if he wants to keep his current character appearance. Staring into his own tired eyes, he decides to skip the cosmetics and get straight to the tutorial. A notification pops up revealing that his combat correction is set to 0 because he fought in the real hell. He proceeds to the ability selection screen, where the system explains the complexity of character builds. In the professional league, players obsess over optimizing these elements to create the perfect warrior. But for Woo Hyun, the path to his legendary title of metahuman begins now, as test subject number 48. Woo Hyun wakes up in the familiar white cell, the system noting that a week has passed since the last test. He recalls the brutal reality of Project Transcendence, where awakening usually meant torture and madness. The door slides open, and the cold voice of a researcher orders him to proceed to the testing area. He steps into the arena, the heavy mechanical sounds of his opponent echoing through the vast, sterile room. The enemy is an Etenel, a suppression droid specifically designed to put down test subjects who go berserk. A blue window pops up with a simple tutorial quest. Destroy the killing machine using his ability. Woo Hyun stares at the robot's optic sensor, instantly recognizing it as the outdated first version. The sight drags a repressed memory to the surface, the sound of his own name screaming in his mind. He sees the terrified face of a friend from the past, crying out in absolute despair before the end. In that original timeline, this machine was a butcher, slaughtering his entire party while he watched helplessly. The red eye gleams with lethal intent, a symbol of the trauma that has haunted him for a decade. The machine charges, its massive blade arm swinging down with enough force to cleave him in two. But Woo Hyun stands his ground, calmly noting that the cruelty of these researchers is the same in every timeline. The blade slams into the floor, missing its target as Woo Hyun moves with supernatural precision. He dodges the follow-up attack effortlessly, his movements far too fast for the machine's sensors to track. His eyes glow with golden energy as he curses the scientists for the suffering they inflict on their victims. The robot swings again, but Woo Hyun is already inside its guard, moving like a phantom through the steel. He vaults onto the machine's chassis, turning its own massive size into a disadvantage. He acknowledges the first version's annoying durability, but to a veteran like him, it's just a minor nuisance. With a surge of power, he drives a fist directly into the machine's core, crumpling the metal like paper. He slams the droid into the ground, proving that outdated tech is no match for 10 years of combat experience. The Etenel shatters into scrap metal, destroyed in a single, decisive exchange that leaves nothing but debris. Silence falls over the arena as the system announces the conclusion of the test, the dust settling around him. Woo Hyun stands victorious, while the researchers marvel at the impossible strength of test subject 48. They praise his talent as leagues beyond average, completely unaware they are looking at a monster of their own making. The blue window confirms the tutorial is complete, marking the first small victory on his road to vengeance. The researchers prepare to move to the next phase, but the facility suddenly shudders under a violent impact. Red emergency lights bathe the room as panic erupts over an intruder alert from the government. A woman's voice crackles over the intercom, addressing the oppressed victims and urging them to fight. As explosions rock the facility and a new escape quest appears, Woo Hyun freezes, recognizing that voice. The wounded soldier spots the approaching figure, relieved to see a fellow victim rather than an enemy. Bleeding out on the floor, he offers his final assistance to help Woo Hyun escape this facility. He gestures weakly to the wall of weapons, telling the escapee to take whatever is needed for the fight ahead. He hands over a communication device, urging Woo Hyun to contact the bureau once he breaches the perimeter. The device clatters into Woo Hyun's hand as the soldier finally succumbs to his injuries, leaving only silence. Woo Hyun crouches amidst the arsenal, the weight of the dead man's request settling on his shoulders. Suddenly, the wall explodes inward as another mechanical enforcer breaches the room to halt his progress. Woo Hyun reaches for a weapon, his hand closing around the cold steel of a chain-linked scythe. A wave of nausea hits him as he holds the tool of violence, his body rejecting the familiar sensation of killing. The scene shifts to the real world, where the streamer Kang So-yul is lamenting her choice to play this cursed game. She strikes a dramatic pose, complaining that her hipster pride is wounded by playing such a mainstream hit. Her chat relentlessly teases her, reminding her that this torture was a punishment she agreed to for failing a challenge. But Soil puffs out her chest, declaring that she is a woman of her word who respects the rules. She boasts to her audience that she has never once broken a promise to her viewers, which is a bold lie. The chat immediately floods with receipts of all the times she bailed on games, calling out her selective memory. Ignoring the accusations, she vows to completely dominate Reverse Planet to prove her gaming prowess. The viewers cheer for the content, eager to see their streamer suffer in the virtual world she clearly underestimates. She enters the character creation suite, deciding that her natural beauty needs no digital alteration. With a confident grin, she prepares to select the most overpowered abilities available to make her life easier. The system prompts her for the final setting, the crucial combat correction level. This assist feature is the only thing keeping new players from flailing around like helpless toddlers in the game. The prompt awaits her decision, a choice that will determine the difficulty of her entire run. Her chat immediately turns toxic, baiting her to turn the assist off completely for pro status. She hesitates, wondering if she should trust the advice of people who clearly want to see her fail. In the real world, she types furiously, unaware that almost no one actually plays with zero correction because it's suicide. Blinded by overconfidence, she convinces herself that her indie gaming skills will translate perfectly to virtual reality. She doesn't realize that playing without assist is physically disorienting, like trying to control a phantom limb. The chat erupts in disbelief, realizing she is actually crazy enough to listen to their terrible advice. A special mission appears offering a massive cash reward for clearing the tutorial with zero assistance. Her eyes practically turn into dollar signs as she accepts the challenge, greed overriding her survival instincts. Soyul celebrates the prospect of finding a party, thinking safety in numbers will save her. She checks the interface while her chat mercilessly mocks her for trying to get carried through the game. But her confidence crumbles as the system returns an error message stating the matching failed. Her viewers gleefully explain that the system only pairs players with the exact same combat correction settings. The realization hits her that finding another lunatic playing with zero assistance is statistically impossible. The chat roasts her situation, pointing out that she has effectively locked herself into a solo suicide run. Panic sets in as she frantically tries to hit the cancel button to save her own skin. But fate has a twisted sense of humor, and the system suddenly announces a successful match. She stares at the screen in disbelief, stunned that another person actually exists in this difficulty bracket. The system drags her into an ongoing mission, teleporting her to the escape the research facility scenario. She screams in absolute regret as the digital void swallows her up. Her expression shifts from confidence to the tearful realization that she is completely out of her depth. She materializes in a dark corridor, surrounded by the smoking wreckage of destroyed security droids. Even the trolls in her chat go silent, realizing the scene before them is not normal gameplay. The viewers question the reality of the situation, doubting that even a pro player could cause this much destruction. They note with horror that the destruction wasn't caused by firearms, but by something far more visceral. Sparks fly from the crushed chassis of a machine that usually requires a full squad to defeat. The text emphasizes the impossibility of destroying so many elites without aim assist or guns. Soyul's fear instantly vanishes, replaced by the joy of realizing she just matched with a god-tier carry. Elsewhere in the facility, a blade drips with fresh blood, signaling the end of another fight. Woo-hyun walks through the aftermath, his white uniform stained with the evidence of his efficiency. His eyes glow with a cold, predatory light, his humanity buried under layers of combat instinct. Soyul peeks around the corner, spotting the silhouette of her potential savior amidst the bodies. She steps out to greet him, completely unaware that she is approaching a man running on pure trauma. Before she can finish her sentence, she is slammed against the wall with a blade pressed to her throat. The cold steel reflects in her widening eye as she stares death directly in the face. She shrieks an apology, and Woo-hyun freezes, realizing his muscle memory nearly killed a civilian. As he lowers the weapon, she connects the dots, realizing this blood-soaked figure is her teammate. He dismisses the encounter with a cold goodbye, having no interest in babysitting a streamer. She chases after him, introducing herself and her stream, desperate to cling to the strongest player in the game. Soyul cowers on the floor, overwhelmed by the sudden hail of bullets turning the tutorial into a war zone. She looks up in shock as her silent teammate finally decides to join the fray. Woo-hyun descends from the ceiling like a spider, dodging gunfire while hanging effortlessly from his chains. He swings his weapon with terrifying momentum, turning the steel links into a deadly pendulum. The scythe tears through the armed guards before they can even readjust their aim to track him. Soyul watches from the floor, her chat overlay going wild over the unknown player's impossible skill. The viewers are baffled, unable to identify a player who can wield a chained scythe with such lethal precision. She peeks over the barricade, realizing that his movements shouldn't be mechanically possible in this game mode. The chat speculates on his build, noting that only the absolute being trait changes eye color to that specific white. Soyul freezes at the mention of that ability, knowing it is infamous for being completely useless trash. Woo-hyun's eyes glow with a haunting light as he focuses entirely on the slaughter, ignoring the game's limitations. The ability is notorious because it locks the user out of all other skills, making them a sitting duck for magic users. It boosts physical stats to the absolute limit, but leaves the user with zero magical or special abilities to rely on. The community universally agrees it is a suicide build that usually results in an immediate game over. Soil can't comprehend how someone could fight this effectively without a single active skill to assist them. Viewers share horror stories of trying the build and deleting their characters after failing miserably within seconds. She realizes that without system corrections, the player has to rely entirely on their own real-world reflexes and combat experience. Going all in on physical stats might work in theory, but the execution requires a level of coordination that no gamer possesses. Yet Woohyun defies the game's logic, moving with a fluidity that no system assist could ever replicate. He crashes into the enemy formation, using the chains to disarm and dismantle them simultaneously. The blade strikes with devastating force, crushing armor and bone alike in a single, fluid blow. He walks through the carnage he created, dragging his chains like a grim reaper finishing a double shift. The weapon drips with the aftermath of the battle, a silent testament to his terrifying efficiency. But even amidst the victory, a dark aura surrounds him as he mutters that this level of violence isn't enough. The voices in his head urge him to be more brutal, demanding a level of revenge that defies sanity. His heightened senses pick up a heartbeat, and he turns his gaze toward a guard hiding in the shadows. The surviving enemy lines up a shot through a scope, thinking he has the element of surprise on his side. Soil spots the ambush and screams a warning, throwing herself into the line of fire to assist. She fires her handgun wildly, managing to take down the attacker while Woohyun watches with mild surprise. The threat is neutralized, leaving Soil panting on the floor while her chat likely prepares to roast her terrible aim. Soil slides across the floor, firing her weapon in a desperate bid to contribute to the fight. She strikes a pose on the ground, trying to look cool while her chat debates whether she actually did anything useful. Woohyun stands over her with his bloodied weapon, the gap in their combat abilities painfully obvious. She flashes a bright, nervous grin, seeking validation that her suppressing fire was actually helpful. But in her smile, Woohyun sees a heartbreaking overlap with the innocent girl he failed to save in the past. The memory of his fallen friend overlaps with the present, momentarily softening his hardened exterior. He offers a rare, gentle smile, validating her effort to keep the ghosts of his guilt at bay. The chat immediately changes its tune, swooning over the mysterious Carrie's voice and sudden kindness. Encouraged by his response, Soil eagerly asks if she can continue tagging along for the rest of the tutorial. He agrees, introducing himself simply as Baek Woohyun, a name that means nothing to her yet. As they walk, she hesitantly asks the question on everyone's mind. Did he really pick the suicide class? Absolute being? The chat confirms the suspicion, lamenting that such a handsome player chose the worst possible ability. Soil stops in her tracks, unable to comprehend how someone could survive, let alone dominate with a trash tier class. The viewers realize that his performance isn't due to the class being good, but because the player is a statistical anomaly. She questions how he can dodge bullets without system assistance, wondering what kind of monster gamer he is. Woohyun suddenly halts, his combat boots grinding against the floor as his instincts flare up. He calmly announces the presence of two heavy mechs 20 meters ahead, despite having no detection skills. Soil looks around in confusion, seeing nothing but empty corridors and wondering if he's hallucinating. The chat is baffled by his spatial awareness, realizing he is calculating enemy positions using raw senses alone. He steps toward the mechanical giants, casually mentioning that this reminds him of his old days in the Coliseum arena. Two massive Etenel units emerge from the shadows, their red eyes locking onto the intruders. Woohyun launches himself into the air, swinging his chain scythe with the familiarity of a veteran gladiator. The weapon impacts the machine with tremendous force, buckling the metal plating like aluminum foil. He tears through the construct, his physical strength far exceeding what the game logic should allow. Amidst the destruction, he drops the bombshell that he used to be a ranker in the game's PvP arena. The massive robot collapses into a heap of scrap, dismantled in seconds by a man with no active skills. The chat goes wild, finally understanding that they are watching a master at work, not a madman. Soil stammers, asking if being a Coliseum ranker is really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. The chat explodes with context, explaining that the legendary pro gamer Battler came from that same brutal ranking system. Soil's jaw drops at the mention of the pro scene's biggest star, realizing she is in the presence of greatness. The system announces the start of the final tutorial mission, the last barrier to freedom. A red-haired figure descends the stairs, radiating the kind of arrogance that usually precedes a boss fight. The interface identifies him as the lab security chief, the final hurdle for the test subjects. He taunts the duo, promising they will soon join the pile of corpses he has already created. Woohyun's eye twitches as the man's face triggers a violent memory from the original timeline. The room suddenly feels crowded as the hallucinations of the dead rise from the floor to confront their killer. The shadows of his fallen friends scream in silent agony, their distorted faces overlapping with the enemy before him. The chief launches himself forward, eager to crush these rebellious rats with his bare hands. Soil peeks out from cover, shouting that she will provide covering fire like a helpful sidekick. But her bullets bounce harmlessly off a particle barrier, leaving her shocked by her own irrelevance. The chat immediately roasts her, pointing out that standard bullets are useless against an awakened boss. Woo-hyun steps forward, his expression darkened by the shadows of the past that only he can see. The viewers cackle as Soil instantly resigns herself to being carried, accepting her role as the team mascot. Woo-hyun acknowledges the reality of the situation, accepting that this is a digital construct. He tells himself this is only a game, a simulation that cannot truly hurt him. But he decides that if destroying this avatar brings peace to the spirits in his head, it is worth the effort. He clashes with the boss, his fist meeting the enemy's guard with the force of a freight train. The impact creates a shockwave that distorts the air, blowing back the dust and debris. Soil stares in confusion, wondering if the game just glitched because a level 1 character shouldn't hit that hard. The chief struggles under the pressure, the floor beneath him cracking as he tries to withstand the weight of the attack. The chat speculates that Woo-hyun's Iron Man skill must make him weigh a literal ton to cause that kind of damage. The boss breaks free and leaps into the air, screaming threats of dismemberment as he prepares a counterattack. Viewers note that with Woo-hyun's zero defense build, a single hit from that monster means instant death. But the massive attack hits nothing but air as Woo-hyun sidesteps the strike with casual grace. The chief unleashes a flurry of strikes, frustrated that he can't seem to touch this slippery lab rat. His arm transforms into a spinning drill, tearing through the air in a blind rage to catch his opponent. Woo-hyun weaves through the falling debris, his movements efficient and terrifyingly calm amidst the chaos. The chat marvels at his evasion skills while mocking Soil's useless attempts to help from the sidelines. Woo-hyun spots an opening and drives a heavy fist directly into the boss's face, shattering his momentum. The security chief stumbles back, clutching his broken mask in disbelief as Woo-hyun stands ready for the next round. The glitchy, skeletal hands of his past trauma reach out, reminding him to keep his guard up. The shadows of his fallen friends scream for blood, urging him to tear the enemy apart just as they were torn. The security chief trembles in terror, unable to comprehend how a mere test subject possesses such overwhelming power. Woo-hyun coldly thanks the man, attributing his monstrous strength to the torture they inflicted upon him. He clenches his bloody fist, ready to deliver the final judgment on the architect of his misery. Soil stands frozen in the background, unsure if she is watching a video game or a crime scene. The system finally announces the defeat of the boss, marking the end of the brutal tutorial. Soil stammers in confusion, realizing that what she just witnessed defies every mechanic of the game. Her chat goes wild, acknowledging that this carry is less of a player and more of a force of nature. She tries to lighten the mood with a cheerful victory pose, ignoring the brutal execution happening behind her. Woo-hyun stands over the broken body of the boss, his silence louder than any victory cry. Blood drips from his hand as he signals that it is time to leave this cursed place. The boss's corpse dissolves into digital particles, erasing the evidence of the one-sided beatdown. Woo-hyun walks away without a backward glance, leaving the carnage in the dust. They step out into the virtual sunlight, finally escaping the confines of the laboratory. System notifications flood the screen, rewarding him for a feat no one else has ever achieved. Soil asks if he plans to continue with the main quest, hoping to ride his coattails a bit longer. Woo-hyun declines, his mind still heavy with the memories of the dungeon he just left. Soil stretches, deciding to call it a day since her carry is logging off. She stops him with a sudden request, having a business proposition for her savior. The system confirms the completion of the No Corrections run, a badge of honor for lunatics. Soil eagerly invites him to become a regular guest on her stream. She sweetens the deal with promises of a hefty appearance fee, thinking cash rules everything. Woo-hyun considers it for a split second, weighing the offer against his need for solitude. He politely but firmly refuses, having no interest in becoming an internet celebrity. Soil realizes she can't buy him, so she settles for asking to add him as a friend instead. He agrees to the request, and she logs out with a cheerful wave. Left alone in the digital void, Woo-hyun wonders why he hasn't been sent back to the hellish version of the game. Meanwhile, at the game developer's headquarters, panic begins to set in over the anomaly. The community erupts with accusations of hacking, refusing to believe a human could be that powerful. The footage of his brutal finish plays on loop, a violent masterpiece that defies the game's physics engine. In the game company's headquarters, the development team stares at the screen, unable to comprehend what they are seeing. The community manager reports that the forums are in meltdown, with users demanding an explanation for the anomaly. A senior developer asks if it's a hack, but his colleague looks like he hasn't slept in days as he denies it. The security analyst confirms he checked every line of code and found absolutely zero evidence of tampering. He explains that he's used to seeing hackers who clip through walls like bad ghosts. He's seen the ones who turn invisible to troll people, but this situation is entirely different. He points to the screen, noting that the fluidity of the chain combat is something no program could replicate. The team leader slams the table, frustrated that a human player is somehow outperforming their own engine. They conclude that if this isn't a hack, they are dealing with a complete madman of a player. One optimistic employee suggests there might be a new type of hack they just haven't detected yet. The director considers this, realizing they need to be absolutely sure before making a statement. With a serious expression, he decides they must bring the player in for a formal, in-person verification. Meanwhile, in the real world, the sun shines peacefully on a cafe where the subject of their panic is taking a break. Soil leans across the table, thrilled that her stream has become the epicenter of a massive controversy. Woo-hyun looks unimpressed while she celebrates the chaos like it's a birthday party. She gleefully announces that his stunt has spawned a viral no-correction challenge that is ruining everyone's day. The forums are filled with players failing miserably and crying that Woo-hyun must be cheating to survive. She shows him the replay on her tablet, admitting she was just as shocked as the trolls when she first saw it. She notes that while the broadcast hid his face for privacy, his identity is still the topic of debate. He explains that he recognized her in-game only because she loudly announced her own name. He dismisses the fame, confident that no one can identify him since his face wasn't shown. She counters that his fighting style is so unique that anonymity is impossible, just before a notification interrupts them. She reveals a direct summons from the game's Korean branch, which is a huge deal for any gamer. She slams the table again, shouting that they want to test him personally to prove he's not a cheater. Her eyes sparkle with the potential for views, realizing this event will be the content of the year. She presses him for an answer, desperate for him to say yes so she can ride the wave. Woo-hyun stares into his drink, realizing this is the opportunity he has been waiting for. If he can get close to the higher-ups, he might finally find a lead on the dimension that trapped him for 10 years. He agrees to the test, and Soil beams, unaware that for him, this isn't a game event, but an investigation. A simple text message seals the deal as Woo-hyun agrees to step into the spotlight to clear his name. Soil reacts with the kind of unbridled joy usually reserved for winning the lottery or finding a rare item. She immediately gets to work, watching her viewer count projections climb like a rocket fueled by drama. In her studio, she prepares for the broadcast that will likely define her entire streaming career. The official announcement goes live, promising to settle the hacking allegations once and for all. 4 days pass as the internet sharpens its pitchforks in anticipation of the public execution. Woo-hyun logs in, looking as calm as a monk despite being the most hated man on the server. Soil rushes over, guilt-tripping herself about dragging him into this mess with her ambition. He brushes off her apology, casually asking if she thinks he's a cheater too. Her mind flashes back to the terrifying sight of him butchering enemies with the eyes of a serial killer. She sweats nervously, claiming it's just a gut feeling while trying not to admit he scares her. Desperate to change the subject, she signals the start of the broadcast as the camera drone activates. She switches instantly into streamer mode, greeting her audience with practiced enthusiasm. The chat floods with a mix of excitement, accusations, and people just there for the chicken and drama. 10,000 viewers tune in instantly, while Woo-hyun stands there looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. She introduces the man of the hour, trying to hype up the guy who barely speaks. Woo-hyun introduces himself with zero charisma, prompting the chat to call him shameless for showing his face. Soil tries to moderate the toxicity, warning the chat to behave or get muted. She asks him how he feels about the controversy, handing him the mic for a statement. He pauses, looking at the facility gate, and simply calls the whole situation absurd. In his mind, comparing this petty internet drama to the 10 years of hell he survived is almost laughable. The chat interprets his dismissal as arrogance, speculating if he's some high-tier ranker in disguise. Soil laughs awkwardly, trying to spin his bluntness into content while the chat demands proof. She plays her trump card, announcing that they brought in a heavy hitter for the verification. A figure materializes from the light, dressed like he's about to audit someone's taxes. It's Park Gum-hyun, the operations team leader, wearing the coveted GM tag like a badge of authority. The chat loses its collective mind, realizing this isn't just a skit. The developers are actually involved. Woo-hyun eyes the man carefully, realizing this corporate suit might hold the keys to the mystery of his missing decade. Introductions are exchanged, with Soil being polite and Woo-hyun being his usual stoic self. The GM scrutinizes Wu Hyun, looking for any outward sign of the anomaly that has his team in a panic. The test begins with the summoning of an intermediate ethanol, a massive upgrade designed to crush arrogant players. But as the machine looms over him, the voices of the dead whisper in Wu Hyun's ear, demanding vengeance. The GM starts to explain the rules, intending to set a complex victory condition for the match. But before the first sentence even leaves his mouth, a gust of wind nearly knocks him over. He blinks in confusion, realizing the test subject has vanished from his starting position faster than the server tick rate. He stammers out the rest of his command, but the violence has already begun without his permission. Debris rains down on the observers as the test turns into an immediate demolition. The chat watches in horror as Wu Yun dismantles the tank-like robot with his bare hands. Viewers start feeling sorry for the machine, noting that the player is significantly scarier than the monster. Wu Yun stands atop the scrap heap, the system confirming 0 hacks were used to achieve this brutality. The GM stares at the wreckage, his mind rejecting the reality that a human could move like that without software assistance. Wu Hyun steps down from the corpse of the machine, his boots hitting the floor with a heavy final thud. He calmly announces he's done, while the GM scrambles to process that the fight lasted less than 3 seconds. The GM sweats nervously, admitting that while no hacks were found, the fight was too fast to gather any meaningful data. He proposes a new test, asking Wu Hyun to fight in a very specific, predetermined style to rule out automation. Wu Hyun agrees without hesitation, while the GM internally plots to trap him with a complex request. The logic is simple. Aimbots and scripts can kill efficiently, but they can't follow artistic direction or improvise. If Wu Hyun can execute a specific kill method on command, it proves his skills are organic, not programmed. The order is given: decapitate 3 intermediate bots simultaneously using only the unwieldy chain scythe. The GM watches intently, convinced that the difficult weapon and multiple enemies will finally expose the player's limits. Wu Hyun stands ready, the white uniform of the test subject stark against the dark arena floor. 3 massive droids charge him at once, but Wu Hyun doesn't feel even a flicker of fear. He moves like water, weaving through the metal giants as they try to crush him into paste. The chain scythe comes alive in his hands, dancing through the air with a mind of its own. He manipulates the weapon's trajectory mid-flight, defying the physics engine with sheer skill. In a single, fluid motion, the blade arcs through the air, connecting with all 3 targets in a perfect circle of death. His eye glows with that familiar golden light, the mark of a predator playing with its food. He stands amidst the sparking ruins, the 3 heads rolling on the floor exactly as requested. Soil cheers vindication from the sidelines, while the chat wonders if the weapon itself is bugged or if the player is just a god. The GM admits they have seen enough, but his expression suggests he is more terrified than reassured. The GM's curiosity overrides his fear, wondering just how deep this player's potential truly goes. He admits to his own greed, deciding to push the test to its absolute breaking point. Wu Yun stands amidst the wreckage, waiting patiently as the facility prepares its final challenge. In the darkness, a pair of crimson optical sensors flare to life, radiating pure malice. The chat recoils in horror as the advanced training bot steps out, a machine known for ending runs. The system identifies the threat as Ethiel, a late-version prototype designed for slaughter. Wu Hyun's eye glows with recognition, the golden light betraying his familiarity with this specific nightmare. He faces down the sleek machine, the size difference belied by the sheer pressure in the room. The robot's face twists into a grotesque, human-like smile, mocking the life it is about to take. Wu Yun stares back with cold intensity, his focus narrowing to a single point of violence. The machine vanishes in a blur of speed, launching an attack that the eye can barely track. Wu Yun barely twists away, a thin line of blood appearing on his cheek as the wind pressure cuts him. He retaliates instantly, driving a heavy fist into the machine's midsection with a thunderous impact. The blow lands solid, but the shockwave suggests hitting this thing is like punching a mountain. Wu Yun is forced to skid back, the sheer density of his opponent defying the laws of physics. He stabilizes his stance, realizing this opponent is in a completely different league than the fodder. He calculates the odds, knowing that a single direct hit from this monster means instant death. The stakes rise even higher as he realizes the margin for error has completely vanished. He throws another punch, but the machine's armor absorbs the kinetic energy without a dent. The feedback in his hand confirms that the alloy is harder than anything he has faced so far. He acknowledges that brute force alone won't penetrate this defense, forcing a change in tactics. Ethiel swings a massive arm, the attack tearing through the air with the sound of a jet engine. Wu Yun ducks under the limb, resolving to keep hammering the same spot until something breaks. From the safety of the observation deck, the GM and Soyul watch the impossible dance with bated breath. The chat is terrified, realizing that Woo-hyun is playing a perfect game where one mistake equals game over. The GM sweats profusely, stunned that a player with 0 corrections is trading blows with a boss. He notes that while Woo-hyun started on the defensive, the momentum is shifting in real time. Woo-hyun unleashes a torrent of attacks, his speed increasing until he begins to overwhelm the machine. The GM taps his tablet to abort the test, having seen enough to fear for the game's balance. A pillar of light engulfs the arena, forcibly removing the combatants before the robot is destroyed. Soyul triumphantly shouts to her chat, vindicated that her carry wasn't a dirty cheater after all. She latches onto the term hack physical, deciding it's the perfect branding for her mysterious teammate. The GM wraps up the verification, confirming that Woo-hyun is simply a statistical anomaly, not a hacker. With the drama settled, the staff exchange pleasantries, relieved that the server isn't actually broken. Soyul ends the stream with a cheerful sign-off, leaving over 100,000 viewers begging for more. The broadcast cuts to black, ending the spectacle that likely just made her career. Back in the quiet of the facility, the GM bows respectfully, acknowledging the skill he just witnessed. Woo-hyun tries to make a quick exit, having no interest in post-game socializing. But the GM calls out, stopping him with a question that hangs heavy in the air. Woo-hyun turns back, hoping this corporate suit might finally have the answers he needs. He asks about a specific bug, one that would trap a player inside the game against their will. The GM looks confused, as if the very concept of a trapped player is ridiculous fiction. He denies it logically, pointing out that a game-breaking bug like that would have destroyed their company. Woo-hyun accepts the answer with a heavy heart, his hope for a lead crumbling into dust. The GM logs out, leaving the 2 players alone in the digital prep room. Soyul lets out a long sigh, the tension of the broadcast finally leaving her body. She thanks Woo-hyun again, her eyes lingering on him with a mix of gratitude and opportunity. Internally, she is screaming that letting this content goldmine walk away is a terrible business decision. Woo-hyun catches her staring and asks if she has something else to say, putting her on the spot. She struggles with her greed, knowing she shouldn't push her luck after he already did her a huge favor. She decides to play it safe, bowing politely and promising to send him his share of the money later. Left alone, Woo-hyun feels the weight of his failure, having gained nothing but unwanted attention. A sudden notification breaks his brooding, signaling that his real-world friend is watching. It's Nayeon, demanding he meet her immediately now that his little TV show is over. He finds her in the prep room, where she is practically vibrating with excitement over his viral fame. Woo-hyun shuts down the idea of streaming, admitting that managing a chat room is more exhausting than combat. Nayeon looks crushed, having clearly fantasized about managing a superstar streamer. She quickly pivots, suggesting he could just play silently while she handles the annoying social stuff. She starts messing with the settings before he can refuse, determined to keep him in the game. With a mischievous grin, she changes the subject and drags him off to test his skills in PvP. The screen displays the game modes, offering a variety of ways to engage in digital violence, from capture the flag to total annihilation. Nayeon announces that they will be playing Survival, the mode where friendship usually goes to die. It is a classic battle royale setup where 100 players fight until only one survivor or team remains standing. She tries to recommend a beginner-friendly build, assuming Woo-hyun needs his hand held through the process. But he dismisses her advice, sticking to the superhuman build that kept him alive through a decade of actual torture. Nayeon eagerly prepares the recording software, sensing that today's content is going to be gold. She selects the military base as their drop zone, a high-risk area famous for chewing up beginners and spitting them out. She begs him to let her upload the footage to YouTube, her streamer instincts tingling at the potential views. With a reluctant nod from him, she hits the start button, sealing the fate of everyone else in that lobby. The system counts down the seconds until deployment, locking in the military base as the arena. Nayeon offers a cheerful salute, telling her partner to stay alive, completely unaware he is the safest person on the map. They spawn into the ruins, and Woo-hyun lands silently while another player materializes nearby. The unsuspecting victim looks around the third-floor hallway, thinking he has time to loot in peace. He complains about the lack of items, oblivious to the predator standing right behind him. Woo-hyun strikes in a blur of motion, silencing the complaint before it can even be finished. The hallway erupts in chaos as the player is deleted from the match in a single, brutal instant. Nayeon crouches in cover nearby, startled by the sudden notification appearing on her HUD. Her jaw drops as the kill feed announces Woo-hyun has already claimed a victim within seconds of landing. The notifications begin to cascade down the screen, a scrolling list of names extinguished by one man. Nayeon stares up in disbelief, realizing her beginner friend is currently wiping out the entire server. She wonders what on earth he is doing, unable to comprehend the speed at which he is dismantling the opposition. Another player meets a gruesome end, cut down before they could even raise their weapon. Woo-hyun stands over the digital corpse of Slime Monster, looking as calm as if he were waiting for a bus. He scans the area, noting that the immediate vicinity is finally quiet after his cleaning spree. A flashback reveals he didn't just get lucky, he slaughtered 4 players simultaneously while descending the stairs. He decides it is time to move on, treating the massacre as a simple farming run for equipment. Nayeon's frantic voice bursts through the comms, screaming for help as she gets pinned down. Woo-hyun checks the holographic map, calculating the distance to her location on the opposite block. She reports she is on the roof, but warns him that the lower floors are a chaotic war zone of fighting squads. He acknowledges the intel and sprints forward, moving so fast that nearby enemies can only gasp in confusion. Woo-hyun closes the distance in a heartbeat, his blade flashing as he intercepts the enemy's attack with terrifying speed. The opponent hits the floor before he even realizes he's dead, leaving his ally staring in absolute shock at the instant elimination. The survivor panics, realizing he is facing a physical agility build that moves faster than the game engine should logically allow. Desperate to survive, the enemy unleashes a massive area of effect attack, screaming for the monster to die. But Woo-hyun dances through the barrage of energy beams mid-air, treating the lethal spikes like harmless decorations. The player screams in frustration, unable to comprehend how his sure kill move hit absolutely nothing but air. A single, precise strike ends the shouting match, silencing the second target instantly as Woo-hyun lands. His golden eye scans the area, already locking onto the next digital signature nearby like a radar. He leaves the dissolving data behind, sprinting toward the next victim without pausing for breath. The kill feed lights up again as he intercepts another player, dismantling them with clinical efficiency. It doesn't matter who they are or what gear they have, everyone falls to the same simple, brutal blade. Nayeon offers to send backup, stunned by the speed at which the building is being cleared, but he shuts her down. He tells her to stay put, his hand already reaching for the next door on his personal murder tour. He steps into the stairwell, his senses extending far beyond the visual range of the game to scout ahead. He pauses in the dark, accurately counting the heartbeats of the ambush squad waiting for him on the other side. He walks into the trap willingly, while a player with a machete prepares to strike from the blind spot behind the door. The blade swings down with lethal intent, aimed perfectly at the back of his neck for a critical hit. But Woo-hyun catches the attacker's wrist mid-swing, stopping the momentum dead in its tracks with a grip of steel. A swift counterattack sends the ambusher flying, proving that surprise attacks don't work on a veteran of hell. He decides the current pace is too slow and resolves to kick his extermination run into high gear. He ascends the stairs like a whirlwind, leaving a trail of blue digital particles in his wake as he clears the path. The system notifications struggle to keep up, listing name after name as he wipes out the entire squad. It looks less like a competitive match and more like a glitch deleting players from the server one by one. Nayeon flinches as loot orbs materialize near her, signaling that the threat is already gone before she saw it. She stammers in confusion, unable to process how the enemies vanished without her firing a single shot. She checks the status screen, her face flushing as she realizes her newbie friend is currently soloing the entire lobby. Woo-hyun's focus remains unbroken, his eyes tracking movement with the intensity of a predator hunting rabbits. He drops from the ceiling and lands beside her, moving so quietly he nearly gives her a heart attack. He stands up, dusting himself off as if he just took a light jog instead of massacring a dozen people. She laughs awkwardly while holding a chainsaw, trying to explain why she brought a horror movie prop to a gunfight. Nayeon boldly declares she will carry the team, a statement that ages poorly in record time. The results screen tells the real story, with Woo-hyun racking up a kill count that dwarfs her contribution. The victory screens stack up one after another, proving that their winning streak was anything but a fluke. By the 10th win, Nayeon is physically trembling from exhaustion, while Woo-hyun barely looks winded. She realizes her friend isn't just good, he is a living weapon that she absolutely needs for her streaming career. Woo-hyun looks at her with confusion, wondering why she is staring at him like he's a winning lottery ticket. She begs him to delay his main quest for just 2 days so she can prepare a proper business proposal. He tries to shut it down immediately, explaining that he has no interest in the mission or the fame. But she refuses to take no for an answer, promising to return with a plan he can't refuse. She dashes off with a cheerful wave, leaving him no room to argue further. Left alone in the digital space, Woo-hyun's expression shifts from annoyance back to his usual cold focus. He realizes that slaughtering players in PvP brought him no closer to the answers he seeks about his past. The scene shifts to the real world, where the city lights offer a peaceful contrast to the violence of the game. Nayeon kicks her feet in the air, giddy with excitement as she scrolls through the aftermath of their stream. The community forums are on fire, with threads debating Woohyun's skills and demanding he go pro immediately. She giggles at the comments, particularly the ones that manage to compliment her amidst the chaos. She rolls around her bed in pure bliss, high on the dopamine of internet validation. The viewer count of over 100,000 is a number she never dreamed she would actually reach. But the high comes with a crash, as she wonders if she will ever see that kind of success on her own. She realizes that her golden age of streaming is entirely dependent on the guy who hates streaming. Lying upside down, she contemplates if being a little more annoying and clingy might change his mind. But the memory of his firm rejection cuts through her fantasy like a cold knife. She recalls his flat tone, realizing he wasn't playing hard to get. He was just genuinely uninterested. She admits to herself that his refusal was absolute, leaving very little wiggle room for negotiation. She decides to focus on the one thing she can control, the massive pile of money they just made. She opens her banking app, curious to see just how lucrative their little massacre actually was. Her eyes widen in shock as the numbers on the screen defy all her expectations. The next day at a cafe, Woohyun arrives to find her waiting with the intensity of a corporate raider. She proudly unveils her master plan, which turns out to be a laptop screen featuring a derpy blue mascot. Woohyun stares at the childish presentation, wondering if this is a prank or a cry for help. An email notification pops up, delivering a massive settlement check and a cryptic message from an anonymous donor. Nayeon loses her mind over the 6 million won payout, but Woohyun ignores the cash to focus on the strange postscript. His expression darkens instantly as he reads the text, a cold chill running down his spine. The donor, Anonymous Viewer 62, welcomes him back to reality and ominously promises a new special mission. Woohyun realizes with horror that this stranger knows he actually lived in the other world, not just played a game. The username 62 is a direct reference to his identity as Test Subject 62, a number only his tormentors should know. He stands up abruptly, demanding to know who sent the donation, his paranoia spiking to dangerous levels. He corners Nayeon, demanding she trace the donor's personal information immediately. Nayeon recoils, explaining that privacy laws make tracking a donor completely impossible. She adds that the only way to interact with such a person is through the live chat during a broadcast. Woohyun stares at the phone, realizing the bait has been set and he has no choice but to bite. With a dark determination, he agrees to become a streamer, solely to hunt down the person mocking his trauma. Nayeon blushes with excitement, completely misinterpreting his murderous intent as a sudden change of heart. She frantically locks in the promise before he can change his mind, securing her golden ticket. The deal is struck, and the laptop screen displays the colorful, slightly cringeworthy logo of their new project. An official announcement drops, declaring that the Hackster Lord will finally appear on a personal stream with a guest commentator. Friday evening arrives, casting a peaceful twilight over the city while the digital world prepares for a storm. Gamers across the country settle into their chairs, ready to witness the return of the anomaly. The community forums are buzzing with anticipation, questions about Nayeon, and countdown timers ticking away. Viewers have their fried chicken ready, treating this broadcast like the Super Bowl of gaming. Inside the virtual studio, the atmosphere is tense as the clock ticks down to the premiere. Nayeon is shaking with nerves, but her co-host, Cha Seung-cheol, tries to hype her up for the big moment. Cha Seung-cheol, a professional commentator, admits he was also nervous about meeting the legendary player. They share a laugh about how easily Woohyun agreed, unaware of the dark vendetta driving his decision. The live signal flashes red, and the broadcast beams out to the waiting masses. Nayeon puts on her best streamer face, greeting the audience with practiced enthusiasm. Cha Seung-cheol introduces himself, adding a layer of professional legitimacy to the chaotic stream. The chat immediately floods with demands to see the Haxical player, ignoring the hosts entirely. Nayeon sweats as she addresses the impatient mob, assuring them that the main event is coming. She reveals that Woohyun isn't in the studio because he is already standing at the gates of the game world. In the hellscape of his past, survival meant running away in terror, but the man standing in the arena today has forgotten how to flee. He stands his ground as the signal flares, marking the start of the slaughter. Before the soldiers can even process the start, he vanishes from their sight. He reappears in their blind spots, moving faster than their sensors can track. The squad leader screams for a coordinated flank, trying to box him in. But Woohyun weaves through the encirclement, his chain scythe dancing like a living thing. His eyes darken as the ghosts of his trauma overlay the digital enemies. The hallucinations scream for blood, and he obliges with a lethal, sweeping strike. The guards open fire, desperate to put down the anomaly with overwhelming force. He spins the chain into a steel shield, deflecting bullets with impossible precision. The weapon slams into the ground, the shockwave disrupting their firing formation. An arrogant attacker rushes in, mistaking Wu Hyun's aggression for an opening. Another swings a blade, screaming a battle cry that will be his last. Wu Hyun vaults into the air, defying gravity as he manipulates the chain's momentum. The steel links coil like a snake, seeking out limbs and weapons. He yanks the chain, smashing two attackers together with the force of a car crash. The weapon moves so fast it becomes a blur of silver death. He drives them into the dirt, crushing their avatars under the weight of his skill. A weighted end of the chain shatters a helmet, silencing the guard instantly. Wu Hyun lands amidst the chaos, untouched and ready for the next wave. His golden eyes glow with a predator's focus, scanning for the next victim. The remaining guards shout in panic, realizing they are fighting a monster, not a player. Back in the studio, the hosts watch in stunned silence, forgetting to commentate. The expert scratches his head, unable to explain how a human moves like that. Donations flood the screen as the chat debates if his passive skill is broken. The commentator tries to rationalize the violence, discussing the mechanics of perfect existence. He explains that while powerful skills are usually balanced by long cooldown timers, Wu Hyun's ability is terrifyingly simple: raw, unmitigated physical power with zero downtime. And in the hands of a man who lived through hell, that simplicity is devastating. The guards scream for an encirclement, apparently eager to die in a coordinated formation. Wu Hyun stands amidst the fallen, waiting as a new squad arrives with better gear and actual tactics. Their leader steps forward, introducing himself as Kim Chil from the Otherworld Management Bureau and asking for a peaceful surrender. The official seal of the Bureau flashes on screen, the government force tasked with policing dimensional rifts. Their mandate is simple: trap and subjugate the dangerous entities that bleed into reality from the inverted world. Wu Hyun recognizes the man immediately, remembering him as a capable team leader from the Hell Dimension. Kim Cheol orders his men to stand down, identifying Wu Hyun as a victim of the lab rather than a villain. Wu Hyun's focus shifts to the radio in the man's hand, an object that carries a heavy history. He remembers the agent who gave him that radio in the original timeline, a lifeline bought with blood. Realizing that agent is likely dead in this version too, Wu Hyun notes that Kim Chol is still the same kind-hearted fool. The captain offers protective custody at the Bureau, warning that enemies often pose as victims to infiltrate. Wu Hyun accepts the offer with a simple nod, deciding to see where this path leads. Kim Cheol thanks him for his cooperation, completely unaware he is escorting a human natural disaster. A blue window confirms the mission is complete, marking his official entry into the Bureau's storyline. The level-up notification appears, a small dopamine hit in the middle of his trauma tour. The towering headquarters of the Bureau gleams in the sunlight, a fortress of order in a chaotic world. Inside, Wu Hyun sits in a counseling room, marveling at how clean everything is compared to his memories. He reflects on his past, remembering how he worked as a mercenary after escaping the lab in the other world. To fund his revenge, he took on dirty jobs from corporations, including assassinations and kidnappings. But his main gig was inverted world subjugation, hunting monsters that terrified even the pros. Corporations would loot the easy spoils and dump the lethal cleanup work on freelancers like him. That line of work meant he was constantly crossing paths with the Bureau. Sometimes they were allies against a greater threat, and other times they were pointing blades at each other. The door slides open, and a woman enters with a polite greeting that pulls him back to the present. She introduces herself as Lee Yujin from Team 1, looking sharp, professional, and dangerously familiar. The chat explodes with excitement, simping hard for the NPC known as a top-tier beauty. Wu Hyun stares at her, his mind layering the face of an old acquaintance over the digital avatar. She takes a seat, her expression softening as she acknowledges the hell he must have escaped. She lays out his options, presenting two divergent paths for his new life. The first choice is to live as a civilian under their protection, which means sealing away his powers forever. The Bureau stands tall as a government fortress, stepping in where private companies failed to take responsibility for their trainees. While corporations cut corners, this organization built its reputation on suppressing the horrors of the reverse world. Wu Hyun recalls the bitter truth that while corporate pay was better, the risk of death was often part of the contract. He remembers the days he had to threaten stingy employers with a knife just to force them to pay for his life-threatening work. Those violent negotiations were what first put him on the Bureau's radar as a dangerous, pseudo-awakened individual. Back in the present, Lee Yujin outlines the administrative process, welcoming him to the start of his probationary period. Wu Hyun checks his new work phone, ready to jump straight into the action without the bureaucratic fluff. She expresses a personal hope that he gets assigned to her unit, Team 1, hinting at a connection she feels. Woo-hyun agrees politely, masking the fact that he owes her a life debt from a timeline she doesn't remember. He recalls her voice from the past, speaking out for the victims even when they eventually found themselves on opposite sides. In his memory, she was the one who publicly dedicated her victories to the unjust victims trapped in the labs. It was her raid on the facility that gave him and his teammates a fighting chance at survival in that hellish dimension. The interaction ends with a formal exchange of pleasantries, the digital simulation perfectly mimicking a human connection. But the broadcast is suddenly interrupted by a wave of confusion from the studio hosts who notice something odd. Nayeon stares at her screen in disbelief, questioning how a game NPC can hold such a natural, fluid conversation. The hosts exchange baffled looks, noting that standard NPCs usually stick to rigid scripts and awkward pauses. Nayeon recalls her own gameplay, where the interaction was a simple multiple-choice menu with zero personality. She compares Woo-hyun's experience to her own, where the same character was just a static quest giver who refused to deviate. The commentator realizes what they are witnessing, identifying the technology as the legendary, fully responsive AI. The chat explodes with awe, struggling to comprehend a feature that shouldn't be possible in a live MMO. A graphic appears explaining the concept, a holy grail of gaming tech that blurs the line between code and consciousness. It describes an artificial intelligence capable of improvising and responding to any input without a pre-written script. Unlike the mindless drones players are used to, these entities can think, react, and converse like real humans. The commentator explains the massive server load required for such tech, which is why most developers deem it impossible. They speculate on whether the developers somehow cracked the code on resource management to make this work. But the expert dismisses that theory, arguing that if they had solved it, they would have marketed it, not hidden it. News headlines flash across the screen, highlighting the media frenzy this discovery is about to ignite. The commentator deduces that this advanced AI is likely a hidden feature locked behind extreme requirements. He concludes that the trigger condition must be the insane no-boost start that Woo-hyun chose. Nayeon looks at her friend's avatar with renewed shock, realizing his stubbornness unlocked a secret layer of the game. A sudden mission pop-up offers a cash reward for reaching bronze rank quickly, and Nayeon's eyes practically turn into dollar signs. Woo-hyun accepts the challenge with a casual gesture, while Nayeon messages him to crank the difficulty up to 10 wins in 30 minutes. Back in the studio, the hosts watch with bated breath, wondering if the so-called hacker can actually back up his confidence. But the narration ominously notes that the audience has absolutely no idea what they are about to witness. The matchmaking system pings, dropping Woo-hyun into the residential district for his first duel. His opponent is already charging up a magical attack, while Woo-hyun stands still, looking like he brought a knife to a wizard fight. The commentator pauses, confused by the loadout Woo-hyun is sporting. He grips the hilts on his back, revealing a weapon type that isn't exactly meta in the current game balance. The narration emphasizes that the viewers are clueless about the storm that is about to break. He draws dual blades, a close-range choice that usually spells disaster against a ranged mage class. The countdown ticks away, the chat wondering if they overestimated this mysterious player. The round begins with an explosion of ice magic as the opponent tries to freeze him instantly. The mage screams in exertion, pouring everything into the opening nuke. Blue energy floods the screen, a visual spectacle designed to end the fight in seconds. But Woo-hyun is already moving, slipping past the magical bombardment with terrifying speed. He closes the gap in a heartbeat, his blade cutting through the spellcaster's defenses like they aren't even there. The match ends as quickly as it began, with Woo-hyun's golden eyes glowing over the victory notification. He jumps immediately into the next round, facing a tech user who groans about fighting another alt account. The opponent surrenders before the fight even starts, handing Woo-hyun a free win to pad his stats. The second real match pits him against a shadow user, but Woo-hyun weaves through the dark tendrils with ease. The enemy's confidence shatters as he realizes his shadow spears are hitting nothing but air. A precise strike ends the duel, sending the shadow user flying into the digital void. The third challenger is a martial artist, launching a high-flying kick that looks impressive, but leaves him wide open. The attacker's face twists in horror as he realizes he just delivered himself directly to the Reaper. Another victory screen flashes, confirming a complete shutout against the martial artist. The fourth opponent, a gentleman with a monocle, looks like he's about to cry as the pressure crushes him. The timeline compresses as victory notifications stack up, a relentless montage of Woo-hyun dismantling the server. The hosts in the studio are left speechless, struggling to process the speed of the climb. The text confirms the impossible. He cleared 10 consecutive wins in just 20 minutes. Woo-hyun stands triumphant as the system promotes him to bronze, making the impossible look like a warm-up. Nayeon beams with excitement, thanking a donor while the commentator prepares to analyze the upcoming carnage. The studio discussion turns to the high probability of stream snipers trying to derail the broadcast for 5 seconds of fame. The commentator jinxes the situation immediately, noting that flagging a concern is the best way to make it happen. The matchmaking system pings, transporting the combatants to the eerie silence of the cemetery stage. An orange-haired challenger spawns in, looking far too excited to ruin someone's day. He points a finger at the camera, announcing his self-appointed mission to expose and humiliate the so-called hacker. Woo Hyun draws his blade with a bored expression, unimpressed by the theatrics of his opponent. Nayeon watches from the studio, praying that Woo Hyun ignores the provocation and sticks to the plan. The barrier drops, signaling the start of the round and the end of the talking phase. The sniper unleashes a blinding storm of electricity, screaming a battle cry that is far louder than his actual skill. The lightning scorches the earth, missing its target completely as Woo Hyun steps aside with casual grace. The attacker rushes through the smoke, convinced that loud noises and bright lights are a substitute for accuracy. The chat fills with mockery as the self-proclaimed teacher realizes he is the one about to get schooled. Woo Hyun ducks under a lightning-infused strike, moving with an efficiency that makes the other player look like he's lagging. A single, precise slash cuts through the flashy effects, silencing the noise in an instant. The system declares the first round a victory for Woo Hyun, proving that trash talk doesn't deal damage. The sniper stares in disbelief, his avatar battered and his ego completely shattered by the instant loss. The game offers no time for excuses, immediately counting down to the start of the second round. They square off again amongst the tombstones, but the sniper's arrogance has been replaced by desperation. He frantically taps at his interface, deciding that if he can't win with skill, he'll win with a dirty trick. Electricity crackles violently around him as he activates a hidden power, turning himself into a living battery. Woo Hyun tilts his head, sensing a shift in the atmosphere that suggests the tutorial is finally over. He adjusts his grip on the sword, his demeanor shifting from bored to focused. The enemy unleashes a torrent of energy that tears through the cemetery, obliterating the terrain. Woo Hyun analyzes the trajectory in milliseconds, noting that the attacks are finally sharp enough to be dangerous. The sniper roars with laughter, convinced that raw power is enough to crush the anomaly before him. He screams that he was holding back before, a classic excuse used by everyone who just got humiliated. Woo Hyun's eyes ignite with golden light, signaling that he is done tolerating this tantrum. He dives directly into the lightning storm, weaving through the lethal bolts with supernatural reflexes. He plants his foot firmly on the ground, the impact shattering the stone as he prepares the final blow. The sniper's lightning misses, and Woo Hyun slams the ground, sending a shockwave that rattles the challenger's bones. The impact forces a cough of blood from the sniper, his arrogance dissolving into pure, visceral shock. He screams a curse, refusing to accept that his powerful abilities are being dismantled by a guy with a basic sword. He launches a desperate fiery slash, but Woo Hyun is already airborne, watching the attack pass harmlessly beneath him. The sniper's face contorts in frustration, realizing that no matter how much power he pours in, he can't hit a ghost. He swings wildly again, but Woo Hyun dances around the blade, treating a life-or-death duel like a rhythm game on easy mode. Tears of rage and fear stream down the sniper's face as the reality of the skill gap crushes his spirit. A blue sensor drone hovers silently nearby, capturing every second of the humiliation for the live audience. Back in the studio, the hosts exchange nervous glances, realizing this isn't a fight anymore. It's an execution. The commentator notes that Woo Hyun seems to be toying with his prey, deliberately delaying the final blow. Nayeon sweats profusely, realizing her casual advice to crush him thoroughly has been taken a bit too literally. The chat immediately blames her, labeling her a terrifying mastermind who created a monster. In the game, the sniper slumps against a tombstone, broken and asking just what kind of creature he tried to hunt. Woo Hyun points his blade at the defeated man, coldly returning the question to the one who started this mess. He grips the hilt, the reflection in the steel showing the terrified face of a man who just learned a hard lesson. The system mercifully ends the round, declaring the match over before the humiliation gets any worse. The final scoreboard confirms a complete shutout, cementing Woo Hyun's victory over the anonymous troll. But the rampage doesn't stop there. Woo Hyun continues to tear through the matchmaking queue like a man possessed. Victory screens stack up in a blur, marking a 30-game winning streak that defies all statistical probability. The studio hosts watch in awe as his rank skyrockets to gold in a single session. Nayeon can barely catch her breath, stunned that her friend just set a server record on his debut broadcast. The chat is in disbelief, wondering if he's a Smurf account or just built different from the rest of humanity. A viewer asks the golden question, begging to know the secret build behind this impossible performance. Neon hesitates, knowing that build reveals are usually top-secret trade secrets for pro players. She cautiously messages him, using a cute avatar to soften the request in case he wants to keep his secrets. Woo-hyun stands in the lobby and agrees instantly, having absolutely zero attachment to meta secrets. Nayeon celebrates the scoop, realizing she just secured exclusive content that every player will want to see. She announces the reveal to the stream, promising to post the details as the chat loses its collective mind. The hosts bow to the camera, wrapping up a broadcast that will likely go down in gaming history. Nayeon clicks off the stream, ending the show on a high note while the forums prepare to explode. A pro gamer watches the replay with a critical eye, intrigued by the anomaly shaking up the server. The chat claims that even the legendary Battler couldn't pull off moves like that, which is high praise indeed. And speaking of the devil, Battler himself finds the performance worthy of his attention, sensing a new rival. A few days later, the second broadcast begins in a lush digital forest, setting the stage for the next mission. Woo-hyun waits for his mysterious donor, but the person who knows his secret is a no-show. He wonders if his display of violence wasn't convincing enough to draw the rat out of its hole. A cheerful voice interrupts his brooding, calling out to him like an old friend. Lee Yujin waves enthusiastically, while the chat loses its mind over the high-quality NPC waifu. She asks if he's nervous, but Woo-hyun is just glad to skip the boring training montage. The system assigns his first field mission, fast-tracking him straight to the action. As they walk, he asks for the mission details, treating the game like a military operation. She explains they need to exterminate invaders and seal a breach in the reverse world. They arrive at a dilapidated factory, a site abandoned by corporations after they took what they wanted. She sighs about corporate greed, and Woo-hyun notes that capitalism is equally terrible in every dimension. The target intel identifies the threat as small-scale insect entities, basically space spiders. Woo-hyun is annoyed knowing that weak but numerous just means a tedious cleanup job. A soldier at the perimeter salutes, stopping them for a routine identity check. Yujin flashes her badge with a professional smile, handling the bureaucracy effortlessly. The guard confirms their clearance and steps aside to let the specialists do their work. The heavy metal doors slide open, revealing the darkness within the facility. Woo-hyun's internal alarm bells ring as he realizes something is very wrong. A massive blue portal swirls in the center, far too large for the small-scale mission they were promised. He stares at the vortex, a sense of dread washing over him as he recognizes the energy signature. He has seen this exact phenomenon before in the Hell Dimension, and it wasn't a minor threat. He realizes the intel is fatally flawed. This is a medium-scale disaster waiting to happen. Yujin prepares to enter, completely oblivious to the fact that they are walking into a trap. A mocking voice calls out from the shadows, interrupting their advance. A corporate agent steps into the light, looking far too smug for a man in a monster den. The system identifies him as Choi Hyung-chul from a rival corporation, Gyumshin Electronics. Yujin's face hardens instantly, clearly displeased to see a corporate vulture circling her mission. Yujin gossips about the corporate rival spreading malicious rumors, offering a piece of candy with a casual smile. The studio hosts watch in awe, realizing the AI's dialogue is generating a completely new, hidden storyline in real time. She suggests they cut the depressing talk and head inside, leading the way to the dimensional gate. Blue energy swirls violently as the portal activates, bridging the gap between the game world and hell. Outside the facility, the guards confirm the team has entered, unaware that the difficulty is about to spike. The corporate agent licks his lips with a sinister grin, asking if it's time to start his little operation. 20 minutes later, the setting shifts to a desolate, misty forest inside the reverse world. Woo-hyun stands amidst the trees, wiping blood from his mouth with a grim, battle-hardened expression. At his feet lies Yujin, battered and bleeding, while he stands guard with a blade in hand. The red candy wrapper lies discarded in a pool of blood, a grim reminder of the peace that was just shattered. A flashback rewinds time to just a moment ago, showing the duo stepping into the swirling vortex. They walk through the dimensional tunnel, with Yujin explaining that the reverse world lies just ahead. Woo-hyun's boots crunch on the ground as he realizes the environment feels suspiciously identical to his memories. The tunnel suddenly destabilizes, the magical energy warping violently around them. Woo-hyun freezes, his instincts screaming that this is an anomaly caused by external interference. Yujin shouts for her junior, reacting to the danger faster than the system should allow. She throws herself in front of him, screaming a warning as the dimensional passage collapses on top of them. The scene snaps back to the forest, where the trees rustle ominously in the wind. Woo-hyun stands alone, realizing the collapse has separated him from his guide in unknown territory. He grips his knife, deducing that the tunnel didn't just fail, someone deliberately broke it. But he has no time to investigate as a horde of giant spiders descends from the canopy to feast. He weaves through the ambush, dodging razor-sharp legs with the fluid grace of a veteran. His single visible eye glows with golden light, signaling that the prey has just become the predator. He decides to exterminate the pests first, prioritizing survival before he goes hunting for Yujin. Electricity crackles around his gloved hand as he prepares to unleash a little magic of his own. He slams his palm down, triggering spreading thunder to fry the arachnids in a blinding flash. The monsters screech as they are incinerated, their digital bodies unable to withstand the voltage. Meanwhile, Yujin is fighting her own desperate battle, tumbling through the air to evade an attack. She pants heavily, realizing that the endless waves of enemies are slowly wearing her down. She analyzes the battlefield, noting with dread that this small mission has escalated into a medium-scale disaster. Yujin is fighting for her life, barely dodging a lethal strike while clutching a deep wound on her side. Her attacker laughs maniacally, clearly enjoying the unfair advantage of a coordinated ambush. The leader steps through the flames, revealing himself as Choi Hyung-cheol, the corporate rival who set this trap. He flashes a smug grin, framing his attempted murder as just a necessary part of a secret mission. Yujin is forced onto the defensive, weaving through a flurry of attacks from the corporate hit squad. She stumbles as the pain flares, realizing the wound is draining her stamina faster than she can fight. Survival instinct takes over, and she decides she must create distance immediately or die right here. She slams her hand down, summoning a massive guardian stone to wall off her pursuers. The monolith erupts from the earth, shielding her from the soldiers just as they close in for the kill. But the barrier is short-lived, shattering under the overwhelming firepower of the enemy team. She uses the debris as cover to deliver a swift kick to a soldier's face, buying herself a split second. The squad leader barks orders to hunt her down, refusing to let their loose end escape into the woods. Yujin sprints through the dense forest, her breath ragged as the footsteps behind her grow louder. Desperate, she gathers her remaining mana for a high-stakes gamble to shake them off. She unleashes a blinding torrent of light magic, aiming not to kill, but to create absolute chaos. The spell impacts with tremendous force, turning the forest floor into a crater of golden energy. The shockwave sends the pursuers flying, buying her the precious seconds she needs to vanish. She dives into the underbrush, sliding into the darkness of the earth to escape detection. She pulls the foliage over her head, burying herself in a hidden burrow just as the enemy arrives. Huddled in the dark, she thanks her lucky stars for the centipede tunnel that became her sanctuary. Above ground, the soldiers scramble in confusion, unable to find the target that vanished into thin air. But her sanctuary turns into a trap as a massive, chitinous leg reaches out from the darkness. A giant centipede erupts from the hole, coiling around her and dragging her back into the open. The chat panics as their favorite NPC gets ragdolled by a monster, wondering where their hero is. Meanwhile, Woo-hyun stands over the corpse of a giant wasp, having finished his own extermination job. He scans the ground, his heightened senses picking up the faint, magical trace of his missing guide. His expression darkens as he realizes the chaotic footprints tell a story of violence and pursuit. A sudden scream pierces the air, and his head snaps toward the source of the sound. He vanishes in a blur of speed, the ground cracking beneath his feet as he launches himself toward the danger. He arrives just in time, his knife reversed in a grip that promises immediate and brutal violence. With a single vertical slash, Woo-hyun cleaves the giant insect in two, freeing his companion from its mandibles. He catches Yujin midair with practiced ease, securing her safely while the monster's halves crash to the ground behind them. He checks her condition immediately, while she stares up at him in disbelief, stunned that her junior just saved her life. His golden eye glows with analysis, instantly deducing that a veteran of her caliber wouldn't be reduced to this state by mere bugs. He examines the deep lacerations on her legs, recognizing the clean, surgical cuts of a blade rather than the jagged tears of a monster. He wipes the blood from his face and asks the obvious question. Was it the corporate snake, Choi Hyung-cheol? She confirms his suspicion, admitting that the rival agent followed them into the rift immediately to finish the job. A blue scanning pulse ripples through the forest, signaling that the hunters are actively sweeping the area for their prey. Back in the studio, Nayeon watches the drama unfold, her expression shifting from excitement to genuine confusion. The chat points out that this betrayal event usually happens much later in the storyline, meaning the AI is rewriting the script in real time. The hosts realize they are witnessing a completely unique hidden story generated by Woo-hyun's unpredictable actions. In the forest, Yujin leans against a tree, exhausted and feverish, admitting she barely managed to shake off the pursuit. She urges Woo-hyun to leave her behind, warning that using her powers again would act as a beacon for their enemies. But Woo-hyun ignores her self-sacrifice, calmly telling her to hide while he goes to take care of the problem. She screams in protest, terrified that a rookie is walking to his death against a veteran-awakened killer. He glances back with a confident look, assuring her that he has a plan before disappearing into the shadows. Down in the river valley, Choi Hyung-chul stands with his squad, frustrated that their wounded prey has vanished. He orders his men to comb the area, convinced that she couldn't have gone far with those injuries. His eyes narrow as he spots movement in the brush, a cruel smile forming as he locates a target. He unleashes a wave of fire without hesitation, only pausing when a terrified voice screams for him to wait. A young man stumbles out of the flames, tears streaming down his face in a display of absolute panic. Choi lowers his hand, intrigued to find Yoo-jin's lost puppy wandering straight into the wolf's den. Woo-hyun plays the role of the helpless victim perfectly, stammering about the collapse and asking if they are here to save him. The studio audience cracks up at the Oscar-worthy performance, knowing exactly what happens to people who underestimate him. Choi wraps a friendly arm around him, whispering that he'll be reunited with his senior right after he takes a permanent nap.